Welcome to MSUA's Game Changers Live, where we speak with satellite and mobile connectivity thought leaders about industry trends, new technologies, and share what you need to know about where satellite technology is headed in the future. I'm your host, Lisa Dreer. Today, our guest is David Andres. He is the Vice President of Sales and Business Development for Santander Teleport. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you very much. Good morning over there, and thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, good evening to you.
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe we can begin by just having you give a little bit of background on yourself and then Santander Teleport.
Sure. My name is David Andres, as you said very well, and I am the VP of Sales and Business Development at Santander Teleport. I have been working in the satellite industry for quite some time now, I think since 1998, so about 23 years, both in the United Kingdom and now in Spain, in a number of different companies. Santander Teleport right now at the moment, what we do, we're a teleport operator that is very involved with the satellite operators, service providers in the government and mobility business. So most of what we do is related to, again, mobility aspects.
Great, great. So when you look at the role that the satellite industry is playing in the future of mobile connectivity, what are you seeing right now?
Well, there is a lot happening at the moment. Mobility is becoming, the new trend in terms of communications, and it's not just a satellite. It's generally speaking, everything is going mobile. So anything is being made available. All the applications for all the ways of communicating are becoming or are being made available so that they can be easily used in mobile phones, tablets. Computers are more and more laptops rather than desktops, etc., etc. And that is extending to. There is a need to extend all these to areas where communication has been difficult to reach. Middle of the oceans, remote areas, etc., etc., etc. And that's all that can happen because of satellite industry.
Yeah. So what kind of role does the ground station piece really play in making that connectivity happen from a mobile perspective?
Well, obviously, the ground station, the teleport per se, the gateway, is the nexus between those satellites and the rest of the connectivity. The cloud, the internet, etc., etc. So it's essential that those teleport operators like ourselves and service providers that use those teleport operators have made use of the best technologies in the ground to make sure that those communications are those critical communications are as stable and as available and as possible. And in as we will see in the next few years, with things like cybersecurity being so important, we need to keep those communications obviously very confidential and very accessible to everyone. So all those are pieces that are taken into account and are becoming part of the ground segment infrastructure.
Yeah. What would you say are some of the most significant changes for the satellite industry in the next, I don't know, 12 to 24 months?
Well, it's there are so many things happening at the moment that it's very hard to tell what is going to look like in 12, 24 months. I think what we're seeing is a number of new players that are arriving in the satellite industry, especially working on grabbing all these new technologies, LEO, MEO constellations, with the commoditization of not the commoditization, sorry, the commercialization of space. So the miniaturization of those satellites, making it everything more accessible to a lot of new companies, and they're challenging the traditional satellite operators and the traditional way of working in the satellite industry. I think it's going to be very interesting. I'm not sure about the next 12, definitely for 24 to 36 months. It's going to be very interesting to see whether what is going to look like in the satellite industry, because I mean the big question is, are all these new players, these new technologies going to be disruptors, or are they going to transform the industry? And this is, this is a key element. Are they going to change the way things are done sufficiently to say that the industry is going to look completely different in 2 or 3 years time? Or are you just going to add new technologies and a new way of working, but still keeping, or giving a space for the traditional players?
Right. So I think you're kind of alluding to some of the things that are happening from the perspective of the commercialization of space. What does that mean for the satellite industry?
Well, I think what that means to me is the commercialization of space means that some of the technological breakthroughs that have happened recently basically are allowing a lot of new players that a few years ago wouldn't have been able to afford access to space. So, a lot of new, for example, miniaturization of the satellites. Nowadays a small satellite can do a lot more than a traditional satellite could do a few years ago. This is obvious. These technologies can obviously be adapted as well to the more traditional geostationary satellites and make them even more powerful. But it also allows new players to, with much smaller budgets, to provide services and is making a space a lot more accessible to a lot of, new companies, academic institutions, government administrations, etc., etc.
Right. How are the mega constellations going to impact the ground station market? Does that impact your business? How does that, you know,
Okay, yeah. So I would say that probably a number of opportunities there, because from a teleport operator point of view, these new constellations, as well as the new breed of satellites that geostationary constellations are going to have, they are going to require a much bigger ground segment footprint. So there's going to be a need for a lot more teleports. And if you look at what companies like SpaceX or OneWeb or Telesat, for example, are doing, or SES with an Empower constellation, they are getting access to a lot more teleport space than what they needed before,
yeah.
because in order to make the most of the capacity in those satellites, in those constellations, you need to have a much bigger footprint on the ground.
Yeah. So, when you look at this from the user perspective, what are some of the important criteria they really need to be looking at as they look at their communications plans, especially when it comes to mobile communications?
Well, I think it's important to, as a user, I think from a user perspective, I think more and more, all of us, we're getting used to things that are very easy to use. We have things like, this smartphone that has made our life so easy. We don't even think how they get connected. What is the network behind all that? Or even what all the software that makes all this run, which is very complex, but it's pretty much plug and play and super easy to use. I think the satellite industry, needs to move more and more, and it's taking steps to move in that way. But from a user perspective, with all the choices that are increasing number of choices out there, I think it's very, very important to focus on the basics. What is it that I'm getting? How I'm going to get communicated? How easy is it to use? How reliable? What is my SLAs? What are my service levels? What am I getting at the end of the day? Because it really is not very important for a user whether you're using LEO, GEO, or a 3G connection. Yes, as a user myself, and I think I can extend it to most of the users, the most important thing is, what warranties do I have that this service give me? How easy is it to use? I just want to communicate.
Yeah. Are there different considerations for business, like enterprise users or maybe government users that they need to be thinking about?
Well, it's good to keep an eye on the things that are happening, all these new players that are going to arrive with either as small geos or LEO constellations. The flat panel antennas are going to bring new ways of communicating, making the user experience easier. I believe that at the moment they're bringing new features that are very welcome from a user perspective, but they also have disadvantages potentially, at least today, and they will be evolving and becoming more economical, and they will becoming more efficient. So it's important to keep an eye on these things, so at least you're informed of what your choices are from a user point of view.
Yeah. What types of investments and kind of extension of your business is Santander Teleport making right now?
Well, we are currently keeping an eye on the current situation at the moment. We are at the stage where we're monitoring the situation rather than making big investment decisions, because there are lots of things going on, and I don't think anyone know how things are going to pan out. So I won't say we're becoming passive, but we're very monitoring things very actively and talking to a lot of people. One of the things that we think is going to be very important, and from a teleport point of view, is going to be the virtualization technologies affecting the teleport. So how a lot of the things that are processed using very dedicated, expensive hardware at the teleport, how that can be virtualized using maybe commodity software or even in the cloud, and just maybe keep antennas and high power amplifiers on a teleport, whilst everything else can be done more on a kind of on a kind of software application kind of basis. Whether how you need to modulate or up convert, down convert your signals, split them to go from here to there. All that, that's something that potentially could become could be virtualized and become an application in the cloud. So that's something that is not there yet. It's still a few years from now, from my point of view. But this is something that that is very interesting from a teleport perspective. So we're keeping
Yeah.
an eye on it.
Are there other new technologies that users need to know about, and how do they need to plan for those new satellite technologies as they come into the market?
Well, as I said before, there are so many things happening. If you are on satellite communications, there is a lot of things going on. As mentioned before, flat panel antenna, different constellations, new companies that are arriving and are going to compete with the traditional big 4 or 5 satellite operators. So from that point, also the integration of satellite with the cloud. One of the very interesting things, and this is something that I believe this is the first time that the satellite sector is grasping now, is with the 5G networks that are now in our doorstep. There is a lot of work going on in order to make satellite an integral part of the 5G ecosystem. What this means is that there are big steps that we want to take as an industry. We want to make it in order to make satellite a lot more accessible and not just becoming a niche technology. There are even companies talking about providing using satellite to provide direct connections to mobile phones. So very, very challenging, extremely challenging from my point of view. I can imagine what is needed to do that, but not satellite is being thought today to becoming not just a backhaul network that is difficult to configure and it's on the background of of bigger networks, but also something where potentially your mobile phones could be connecting to without the user having to do anything special or even be aware. We go back to the accessibility of satellite for everyone, and that would be transformational as well for society, because you will be allowed to use your mobile phone anywhere in the world without even having to worry whether you are in the middle of the desert, in the middle of the ocean, um, or whether someone is going to build a specialized network for you.
Yeah, that is exciting. I can't wait for that time. David, I want to thank you so much for being here with us today to share your insights on the satellite mobile connectivity market and the ground station market. I really look forward to catching up with you again soon. I also want to thank the Mobile Satellite Users Association for hosting these sessions. To learn how to participate in a Game Changers live session, to become a member of the MSUA, or receive our weekly satellite mobile news newsletter that gives you the latest on everything satellite mobile technologies, visit msua.org. And we really look forward to seeing you next time on MSUA's Game Changers Live.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here.